Good evening, it's 6 p.m. and I'd like to call the November 15th special meeting of the Town Council to order. If we could please take a moment of silence to acknowledge all those that do and have served, enabling each and one of us our safety, freedom, and voting privileges. Thank you all. In accordance with Mass General Law, tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. I would ask if anyone in the audience is recording, if they could please identify themselves.
I see nobody recording.
Thank you, Don. Tonight's meeting is being held virtually through a Zoom webinar, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Our sole item this evening under new business, response to the open meeting complaint from Tom O'Connor against the town council. After we have a chance to review and get Jesse's input, will be followed by a vote whether we'd like to have Jesse, authorize Jesse to write a response. That being said, Jesse.
All right, thank you all. So yeah, I know that you've all received a copy of the complaint. I just want to sort of go through it and explain sort of based on my conversations with Michael and my own review of the documents, what I think the responses generally will be. And then if you guys have anything else to add, I think that would be helpful too. I just want to make sure we're thinking about the purpose here is really just to respond to the open meeting law complaint. So we're not getting into any of the underlying facts, any of the executive session contents or anything like that. It's just how we're responding to this complaint. So keep that in mind. And I'm just going to generally go through and explain sort of what the complaint alleges and then how I think we respond. And then we can talk about it afterwards. So there's four allegations in the open meeting law complaint. The first one relates to, I guess, sort of how the agenda was crafted, the language about the reference to discipline, which that language comes from the state statute, and it has a litany of things that fall under that section, including discipline, which is not necessarily something that is required to happen or anything. It's just sort of quoting the language from the statute, which is what I would say in the response. The second one has to do with his Councilor O'Connor's attendance. My understanding is that Councilor Kane had reached out to everybody, including Councilor O'Connor, and confirmed the date. I understand that there was a last minute emergency that came up where Councilor O'Connor was not able to attend. You know, the open meeting law requires notice and the opportunity to participate. It does not require that the person be there in person. So I don't think that constitutes an open meeting law violation. I think the opportunity was there. I understand that these things happen and people can't always make it, but I don't think that that's an open meeting law violation. The third allegation has to do with public comments made after the executive session. As far as I can tell, and as far as the complaint alleges, I don't think anybody was named in connection with the executive session, and any comments that might have been made about Councilor O'Connor did not disclose or divulge any of the information from the executive session. So I don't believe that that constitutes an open meeting law violation. The final allegation has to do with an email that Councilor Richards sent out to the town council, town clerk, and the town manager. I think that this is a little bit of a closer question. I think my understanding is that the topic that Councilor O'Connor's complaint alleges is was being debated is the deputy town manager. My understanding is that had sort of been resolved already by a vote of the council before that. Nonetheless, it's sort of in a middle ground between just sort of communicating and laying out information. I think the purpose of the email, having looked at it, was to prompt discussion and debate at a future meeting, in a public meeting. There's some parts of it that are more along the lines of deliberation, I think, where there's sort of an expressing of opinion, which is really what the open meeting law tries to avoid with the group emails. For these sorts of things, even where I think that it's safe to say that this is at best a gray area on deliberation. I usually recommend that where there's a sort of an out of public eye communication, that the best remedy is to just have the email read into the record so that it's out there and it's public now. The response that we give will also include the fact that we've taken that corrective action out of an abundance of caution. And that generally is sort of what I suggest in those situations, just because it's better than sort of holding firm. There's nothing in the email that I think looks improper or, embarrassing on its face. And, it probably would have been safer to do this in the form of speaking at a public meeting or submitting in an open meeting, but it's not egregious by any stretch. And I think that that's probably the easiest remedy. Just a little bit of the procedural background. The response is due, I believe, a week from today. I had already filed a response. Mary McNally was also subject to the complaint or named in the complaint. The open meeting law does not apply to her. She's not a multi-member board, does not have the same restrictions on her as say the town council does. So there's a response already that's been filed with the AG's office that makes that argument known. So my suggestion is basically based on what I've outlined here. That's sort of what I envision being in a response that I would prepare and file with the AG's office along with the complaint.
Jesse, I just wanted to mention that earlier today, Councilor O'Connor did reach out to our Vice President, Ralph Page, and Ralph was able to get in touch with me prior to the meeting. And Tom reached out and said he would not be at tonight's meeting due to medical issues. Okay.
So I guess if people have things they want to add, if there's questions about the process or procedure, again, only things that really deal with the response that we're talking about here to the complaint, not really the underlying issues. But anybody have any questions or things to add?
Marilyn?
Thank you, Mike. Jesse, you mentioned regarding my email that it should be read into the record. Is that done tonight or is that done at a future meeting? When should that take place?
We're in an open meeting. So often these discussions, with council, we would have in an executive session and then we would wait for the next open meeting. There's nothing that prevents anybody from reading that into the record now. And I think that, it's certainly, it's helpful if I can put that in my letter, right? That, okay, maybe there's something here, however de minimis, and it's been read into the record, it's, available to the public. So I think, whether Councilor Kane or the town clerk, I'm not sure who wants to read it in, but I think that probably makes sense either way.
I would ask at this point in time, Marilyn, if you can finish, but when you're finished, I would, if you don't have any objections, I would suggest that our clerk of the council, Jeannie, reads the email into the record.
Sure. My other question, Jesse, is that while I know the intent of why the email was written, because there was no response, that there was no actual deliberation. So many times we receive emails that say, for information only, which was the purpose of the email, don't reply, no reply all. Now I know I didn't put that in the email. Would that have been a different take if I had added that to the end of the email?
It probably wouldn't have made much of a difference. So it's really hard to tell when, because obviously on a multi-member board, you have to communicate information between meetings, right? Even if it's just who's available for this executive session, right? Or on my planning board, we're often disseminating, here's an application that I received or something that we're going to address, and you have all the materials. The key for the deliberation determination is really sort of taking a position. And I think, contrary to the issue of the deputy town manager, which I don't really think fell within an issue that's still before town council, I suppose everything is still potentially before town council. I thought some of the comments about town council conduct and things like that, which have been sort of an ongoing topic, was the part where it sort of veers in and could arguably be deliberation. This is by no means an egregious example from what I see. I don't think that this is what happens when we email all the time, and it can be hard to always stay on top of that.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Sure.
Jeannie, would you mind reading the document into the record, please?
Sure. And just as a reminder, this was an email from Marilyn dated October 17, 2021, and addressed to town manager, town clerk, and town council. Good morning, Mary, Jeannie, and town councilors. I am not sure about the rest of you, but I have become very weary of the council being tried and convicted by the court of public opinion as to our credibility and capability to lead. We do great work, and Mary has been an amazing town manager. Unfortunately, this is being lost in the bickering over a town position title and the suggestion that there is something sinister about 12 minutes of missing tape in the written version of our minutes. I am actually aware that there is interest in circulating a petition for another government change. While realistically that is a daunting task, the distraction of such an effort would be the, quote, kiss of death for our town council work going forward, as well as attracting good and qualified candidates for our town manager vacancy. Minutes first, and then Marilyn cites a link to mass.gov website. This link addresses the sites of MGL that govern what is required within meeting minutes. A summary of discussion is permitted as long as it is clear what the subject matter is. Verbatim minutes are not required. Discussions within minutes, including other town boards, have usually been written in summary, and historically, if a verbatim account was required, the services of a court stenographer would be arranged. It goes without saying that all discussions made, any actions taken, and a record of all votes should be accurately recorded. Jeannie and Jackie do great work and did not deserve the public suggestion that they do otherwise. Hope this helps. Deputy Town Manager. Previous exchanges between Pat and Tom with our town manager, Mary, have referenced informal agreements or discussions or minutes that suggest the title would be agreed upon by all involved. As a counselor, I do not recall and have not been able to locate participating in such a discussion among the town council. If there is such documentation, please cite minutes with location in order that I refresh my memory. There's also a reference by Pat to a, quote, executive committee, which I do not believe we have. While I realize that the reference may have been directed to our president and vice president, his statement implied another tier of authority on the council. I listened carefully to Jim Broderick's words at our budget meeting on May 25th, and when he entered information on town manager office budget number 122, he stated that this budget would be recommended as submitted. With the council adoption of the FY22 budget, we approved the town manager office budget number 122 as submitted. For reference, I have attached the first page of Mary's office budget, which identifies a deputy town manager position. A second page, which I did not include in this mailing, also shows a reference to a deputy town manager position. Perhaps on these two pages, words should have been added addressing, quote, title to be determined. We voted on and unanimously approved town manager office budget number 122 as recommended and submitted, which included a deputy town manager $35,000 part-time position. Hope this also helps. I would think that each of our reputations, as well as the reputation of the town council, would be important to us. The damage done with actions of late will not go away overnight. We have our work cut out for us. Respectfully, Marilyn.
Thank you, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Earlier today, I received a document from Kathy. I think we're all aware that Kathy is still dealing with urgent family matters, and Kathy requested that that document be read into the record as well. I would ask Jeannie if you have that document in your possession, if you can continue and read that in as well.
I do. As to the allegations outlined in number 3, and she's referring to the complaint form, Councillor O'Connor states that I made comments during the October 12, 2021 meeting of the council related to the October 6 executive session. I did not divulge any information from the executive session. In fact, I noted that my concern regarding the remarks and actions of Councillor O'Connor over the previous 2 years were part of the public record, as many occurred during taped meetings of the council and available on YouTube. Councillor O'Connor states that I made a comparison between him and the Las Vegas Raiders football coach who was dismissed for racist and offensive remarks. This allegation is inaccurate and taken out of context. I stated that the unfortunate behavior of one counselor is not unique to East Long Meadow, and as examples, I mentioned national political leaders in Congress, politicians in Boston, and since it had occurred just 24 hours prior, I noted that the Las Vegas Raiders coach, who was the author of unfortunate emails, had the integrity to resign his position before the owners of the organization terminated him. These examples were intentionally used to point out that when an individual's actions rise to the level of being a distraction to the work of the body, that individual commonly resigns. I did not suggest that Counselor O'Connor's actions were racist. Respectfully, Kathleen G. Hill, Counselor.
Thanks, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have anything to add at this point, or we'll go back to Jesse and summarize?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I think the only thing left is assuming that everything sounds in line with how we want to respond. Just a vote for me to prepare the response on behalf of the town council.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to authorize Jesse to respond to the letter.
I move to authorize Jesse to respond to the letter in regards to the complaint of the open meeting law violation filed by Tom O'Connor against the town council.
I will second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. I'll start with myself up in the left top here as a yes. Ralph?
Yes.
Connor?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
And the motion passes. We do not have any other business this evening. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
You have a motion and a second again. Ralph?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Connor?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Yes.
Showing adjourned at 6:17. Thank you all for your attendance this evening and have a great evening.
Thanks, folks. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.